I married Louis during his darkest year. I stood by him as he built an empire from nothing, surviving in turbulent times. When the army stormed Chang'an, he rushed to seek vengeance against the noblewoman who had publicly humiliated him years ago. But after searching high and low, their past grievances melted away, turning into a beautiful tale of rekindled love. When I swung my blade to cleave open the red-walled courtyard gate on Minglu Alley, half the city of Chang'an rushed to gawk at the spectacle. Louis shielded the aristocratic maiden who had once lashed him with a horsewhip, his voice seething as he demanded, "What the hell do you think you're doing? Making such a scene?" My eyes snapped open, returning me to the day Louis proposed to me. I meant to offer him tea, but my hand slipped, and a full cup of hot liquid splashed across his face. Louis looked stunned, but I merely smiled at him with scorn, feeling utterly satisfied. "Isn't this exactly how you like to be treated?" Minglu Alley had never seen such a commotion. This once elegant alley was now packed with layers upon layers of onlookers. At the very center of the crowd, I wielded my knife like an axe, hacking away at the vermilion gate before me, all under the watchful eyes of the crowd. For the powerful and wealthy in the capital, keeping a concubine or two was hardly unusual. But for a noble lady to be this fiercely jealous? That was the real oddity, sparking endless gossip. The vermilion gate swayed precariously, finally snapping in two under the pressure. Behind it, Jiangli's face was as white as snow from fright. I raised my blade to enter, but someone seized my wrist. It was my husband, Louis, who'd rushed here upon hearing the news. Louis shielded Jiangli behind him, his gaze sweeping over the jostling, pointing onlookers with the ferocity of a lone wolf. He demanded angrily, "Why such a commotion? What do you think you're doing?" Yet I merely smiled at him calmly. "I heard Jiangli lived here," I said. "I came to take her life and avenge my husband." Yes, to avenge Louis. Louis despised Jiangli. I knew it. I always knew. No one understood the depth of his hatred for her better than I. They had been betrothed, but the Liu family had fallen on hard times. When Louis was 17, he journeyed all the way to Chang'an, bearing the marriage contract to claim her hand. Jiangli, however, had scornfully rebuffed him. She brandished a horsewhip, accusing him of theft, and used it to strike him 3 times in public. Thus, the only visible layer of Louis's robe was torn apart. In the biting winter wind, thin fleece drifted out, revealing his tattered, faded undergarments. Blood splattered onto the snow, mingling with the filthy, thawing slush beneath his feet. The entire pride of a 17-year-old boy was torn apart and trampled before everyone. He was a youth who held grudges, and this humiliation fueled his hatred for half his life. Later, Louis returned to Jiangdong. His aunt arranged for him to marry me. To this day, the scar on the back of his hand remains, a mark that time has struggled to erase. Back then, Louis was still young, not yet the composed man he later became. When drunk, his guard would slip, clutching his right hand. Tears welled in the corners of his eyes as he choked out, his voice thick with hurt, I didn't mean to steal her pearls. I just wanted to help her pick them up." Seeing his pained, wounded expression, my heart ached unbearably. I pulled him tightly into my embrace. I held his mangled right hand. I sewed him a fur-lined winter coat, its collar stuffed with dense wool. Unless cut by a blade or scorched by fire, no whip could easily tear it open again. I wiped his unfinished tears with a warm cloth. I told him it was all over now. He had married a wife, someone would keep him company henceforth, and no one would dare insult him again. Yet he still habitually traced the whip marks on his hand. Back then, I didn't know that the grudges and resentments between men and women strip away the stroke and the dot from the character for hatred. Add a few more strokes, And after years of lingering over them, they become affection. The so-called endless sorrow, though the song is called The Long Sorrow, holds love in every word. Only I took that hatred as real. So when the army breached Chang'an and Liu Yi rushed to seek vengeance from Jiangli, I even tried to stop him. I said, spare her life. Looking back now, it's utterly ironic. Liu Yi was gone all night. I spent the entire night worrying at home. When he returned, his palm bore 2 teeth marks, and his forearm was scratched from a struggle. Only much later, after he had settled Jiangli properly in the courtyard house on Minglu Alley and visited her often, did I belatedly realize, seeking revenge, a sword or a knife, though it might bring a fleeting sense of freedom and satisfaction, how could it ever compare to possessing her? She was his treasure, untouchable by others. Just as now, Liu Yi shielded Jiangli and said to me with obvious impatience, those were youthful misunderstandings. Ali and I have cleared everything up. You mustn't dwell on it anymore. So it was me who wouldn't let it go. I closed my eyes. My voice hoarse, since it's been cleared up. What business does my husband still have here? Shall we return to the manor together? Liu Yi glanced at the wooden door I'd hacked to pieces, then met Jiang Li's still shaken gaze. His expression softened threefold. You may return first. I have matters to attend to. Following Liu Yi's gaze, I caught sight of a pair of jade bracelets encircling Jiang Li's wrist. Their color was as delicate and pure as lotus petals, utterly free of any blemish. I've accompanied Liu Yi in his quest for power across the Central Plains and seen many treasures of the world. Yet, I've only ever encountered this one piece of lotus stone, clear as glass. The moment I saw it, I fell in love with it. I'd intended to make a pair for myself, but then realized my hands, calloused from years of labor, would look awkward in such fine jewelry. Better to offer them as a grand gift to the Wei Marquis, to smooth Liu Yi's path to higher office. Little did I expect to encounter them again, adorning Jiang Li's wrist. She is a spoiled young lady, as precious as pearls and jade. Naturally, she deserves a delicate, city-captivating piece of jadeite, perfectly matching the character Li in her name. I chuckled softly, my heart bleeding. Liu Yi and I were a couple forged in adversity, bound by life and death. When he donned armor for battle, I led the city's women and children in a desperate defense beneath the gates. His life was mine, his death was mine. I would never live alone. When the army rations were coarse and hard to swallow, I hid a precious piece of venison in my bosom and brought it to him. I once stayed up all night tending to his aunt who was stricken with plague. I also disguised myself as a beggar child, begging my way through layers of checkpoints to deliver vital military intelligence for him. I risked my life for him, yet it proved no match for 3 lashes of the whip. My voice, hoarse and husky, carried an unexpected tenderness as I heard myself speak, enunciating each word. Is this about Miss Jiang? Since she is an old acquaintance, it seems improper for her to remain lodged elsewhere indefinitely. Why not invite her back to the manor to properly renew our friendship? Liu Yi instinctively frowned. Impossible. Ali possesses noble status, how could she become another's concubine? I said invite. Never take as a concubine. But you've reminded me, Miss Jiang and you share a karmic bond, a blessing cultivated over 3 lifetimes. How about elevating her to co-wife? Liu Yi's expression eased noticeably. He gazed at me, his eyes smiling, no longer holding me accountable for the commotion I'd caused. Cece, I never expected you to show such understanding. I returned his gaze, feeling utterly unfamiliar, as if meeting this man for the very first time. Liu Yi had likely never imagined I would strike him, and do so before the entire world, in plain sight, slapping him across the face with my open palm. Incredulity flashed across his face before a torrent of rage surged from him. He seized my jaw with such ferocity it nearly shattered my bones. Yet I felt no pain. Only a bitter, mocking smile. You wish to marry her? I said. Then go ahead. I'll grant you your wish. When I opened my eyes again, several zither came into view. Voices chattered nearby. Listening closely, I recognized the local matchmaker speaking on Lu Yi's behalf, praising him as a scion of a distinguished family. Noble and learned. No ordinary man. She claimed that if I married him, I would surely rise to become a phoenix perched on a branch. The steaming tea in my hands reminded me, this was the day Louis had brought the matchmaker to propose. I had reincarnated back to this very day. I meant to offer him tea. But my hand slipped. The entire cup of scalding liquid splashed across his face. The room fell silent. Even the silver-tongued matchmaker froze in place. Louis looked stunned. But I merely smiled at him with scorn, feeling utterly satisfied. Like it? The freshly brewed tea was scalding hot. Louis gritted his teeth, struggling to maintain his last shred of dignity. What are you doing? Offering you tea. I touched the flower pinned at my temple, then smoothed the creases in my sleeves. Isn't this exactly how you like to be treated? Well, was my courtesy sufficient? The marriage, naturally, never came to pass. As Louis left, he glanced back at me. His eyes were pitch black, sharp as blades, as if he intended to carve my image into his heart. That year, Louis was 17. His family fortune had declined, and he had just returned from Chang'an in disgrace after a broken engagement. His right hand bore whip marks, thick scabs had recently fallen away. Unable to afford precious healing ointments, he was left with scars that would never fully fade. But Jiangli, she was, after all, a noble lady of the capital. Nurtured in a world of gold and silver since childhood, she had grown spoiled and willful. That she lashed him with a horsewhip, though unforgivable, was perhaps understandable. As for me, I was merely a musician from a small town, an orphaned infant raised by others, utterly alone and helpless. No matter how fallen, Louis was still of the gentry. What right did I have to look down on him? When Louis left, his back was ramrod straight. No one knew better than I how fiercely proud and sensitive the 17-year-old Louis was. In my past life, it was his gaze that had moved me. He had hidden and endured to the utmost, quiet yet luminous as a star. Yet he always dwelled on others' wrongs toward him. The kindnesses he took for granted, he never remembered. Hot tea spilled, soaking his collar. The spring chill was biting. Louis would inevitably catch a cold going out. I only wonder if this kind of cold, worn on the skin, might pierce the heart more deeply than the winter's worst. When a coat was whipped to tatters by a horsewhip, I rejected Lu Yi's marriage proposal, and the master who raised me worried deeply for me. Marriage should be a union of hearts. If there's no affection, refusal is better than a lifetime of regret and resentment. Yet my words and actions were harsh, utterly humiliating, leaving him no room for hope. Dingyun County is no bigger than the palm of your hand. If word got out, what would become of me? What indeed? I pondered wearily. Perhaps a woman's reputation isn't so crucial after all. In my past life, I loved what Louis loved, hated what he hated. I worried his hunger and cold, fretted over his life and death. Even the Marquis of Wei once marveled, wondering where he'd found such a perfect wife. Yet despite my devotion, he never treated me well in return. Besides, chaos looms, princes proclaim themselves kings. Even the finest reputation will be worthless then. When heroes vie for dominance, the virtuous are devoured whole. Master's fears were not unfounded. Chang'an's mountains towered and roads stretched far. Few knew of Jiangli and Lu Yi's broken engagement. News of my refusal to Louis spread like wildfire across Dingying within days, likely thanks to that matchmaker's loose tongue. Master's Yao Qin shop has seen more customers these past few days than in an entire year. They all come just to see what this rare, unapproachable girl looks like. Local ruffians chewed grassroots, leaning lazily against the doorframe, hands in pockets, gloating, "Jins, you'll never marry now." I tuned the Qin quietly, lifting my head slightly. If I don't marry, what of it? Can't I live this life well on my own? This year, I was 16, the finest Qin player within 100 miles. Girls lined up to have me tune their instruments. Though Dingyang was a small town, supporting myself wasn't difficult. Still young this year, my hands pressing the strings were fair and slender, not yet roughened or cracked by long hours of toil. A bracelet made of hibiscus stone would look splendid on my wrist. Having been reborn, I felt compelled to reclaim the very thing that had captured my heart at first sight. That piece of jadeite lay in Shenyang, dozens of miles away, discovered by chance in a mountain crevice during my previous life. When Lu Yi and I had besieged Shenyang to obtain the hibiscus stone, I must set out now. Once war erupts and bandits roam the hills, a woman like me will find travel far more difficult. Yet before I could purchase all the necessities for the journey at the market, a new customer arrived at the shop, wearing half a silver mask. He explained his young master's chain string had snapped and requested I visit to replace it. As the finest luthier within 100 leagues, attending to his young master posed no real difficulty. Yet though the guest used polite requests and maintained respectful manners, his tone remained icy cold. The gleaming sword at his waist made the consequences of refusal painfully clear. Having lived in Dingyang for so long, I never knew anyone here could afford such an attendant. I took my silk strings and followed the masked guest out, only to find myself walking all the way to Shiliang Temple on the outskirts of the city. After climbing hundreds of stone steps and passing through the mountain gate, I finally caught sight of a figure within the pavilion's curtains. Even from that faint outline, I recognized him. No one in this world possessed such a piercing profile. The Marquis of Wei Yan. Upon seeing the pavilion, the masked guest instinctively halted 3 zhang away to stand guard. I advanced alone, parting the layers of curtains. The man turned his head, and I caught an unexpected glimpse of his present appearance. The sharpness remained, yet he appeared far younger than my memories held. His brow and eyes hadn't yet absorbed the bloodlust that would later mark them. Wei Yan glanced at me, his eyebrows lifting slightly, seemingly surprised that the invited zither-maker was a young girl. But he said nothing, merely gave a slight nod, stepped aside, and murmured, "Thank you." Shiliang Temple was a rarely visited monastery in Dingyang, its incense offerings sparse. Today wasn't a major festival day like the 1st or 15th, and along the way, I'd seen only a handful of pilgrims. I wondered why Marquis Wei would be here. Yet, even upon this reborn reunion, I found myself without the heart to exchange pleasantries. For the moment I caught sight of the zither exposed on the stone table behind him, I instinctively held my breath. Jiao Wei, one of the 4 great lutes of the age. What a blessing to be entrusted with changing its strings. No luthier in the world could resist such temptation. I admit I had ulterior motives. Under the guise of tuning, I plucked the strings, playing half a melody in fits and starts. Truthfully, I yearned to play it with flowing grace. But first, it felt improper. Someone had invited me to change the strings, yet I was playing with such abandon. Secondly, though I didn't know why Wei Yan was here, he had sent for me, offering a hefty sum and hinting at threats. Clearly, he too valued Jiao Wei immensely. He hadn't invited me to usurp its place. I plucked the strings sporadically, like a thief, when suddenly, the Marquis of Wei spoke. His voice was clear as spring water, yet it was enough to make me blush with shame. He said casually, "If you're going to play, then play properly." My face flushed, and I steadied myself before raising my hand to begin again. This time, I finally produced a melody worthy of the Jiao tale. High mountains and flowing water, the Qin sound rang out, its lingering notes echoing through the hall. When the piece ended, the Wei Marquis looked at me again. His gaze was no longer casual, it held astonishment. And his expression carried a hint of newfound respect. I curved my lips into a deeply satisfied smile. I had said it before, I am the finest Qin player within 100 li. Not only in crafting qins, but in playing them as well. The Wei Marquis summoned his masked guards to bring the promised payment. I bowed my head in respect and politely declined to pay out of pocket for a single silk string, and in return play a rare, world-renowned instrument. What a bargain countless dream of. Yet, at that very moment, disaster struck. First came the arrows, followed by monks from the temple wielding long blades. They sought to kill the Wei Marquis. I should never have come today. Had I not come, I would not have been attacked. Had I not been attacked, the priceless Jiao tale would not have shattered in my hands. My fault. My fault. That single melody just now. It was the swan song. Yet if the Jiao tale had not broken, it should have been me split in two. The blade flashed with blinding speed. One strike missed, but the icy glint followed relentlessly. With nowhere to evade, I clung desperately to the monk who sought my life, plunging together into the cliff below. But why did Wei Ho fall too? That night, after exhausting every effort, I finally found a cave to shelter in. The flint came from Wei Ho's person. So did the healing herbs. There was even a small flask of fiery liquor meant for warmth. 2 sips in total, one I drank myself. The other I fed to the unconscious Wei Yan. His thorough preparations were hard to ignore. He must have known this day would come. When Wei Ho awoke, his wounds had been tended. A fire crackled, roasting a hunted mountain hare, while I whittled a walking stick from stone. Thanks to the monk cushioning my fall, I'd only injured my arm. Lord Wei was not so fortunate. Though he had shielded his heart and lungs, he had broken his leg and was covered in countless scratches from thorns. Now, the two of us combined barely had a full set of limbs. We should count ourselves lucky that spring had arrived and mountain hares were still huntable. But the hibernating snakes and bears were also waking up. That was not good news. With my arm injured, carving branches with a stone proved cumbersome, and stone is far less sharp than a knife or axe. As I pressed one end of a branch against the ground with my foot, grinding away the splinters, a hand suddenly reached out beside me, steadying the tree staff. Even in such a wretched state, the Wei Marquis maintained the bearing of a noble young master. He looked at me, his dark eyes holding a hint of inquiry. Jins, where did you learn to set bones? Indeed, few daughters from ordinary families would know such skills. But in my past life, I accompanied Louis through turbulent times. With so many wounded soldiers and few physicians in the army, I naturally learned bone setting. I didn't wish to dwell on such somber memories with the Marquis of Wei. Lowering my eyes, I replied simply, "This leg was treated hastily. You must see a physician soon. How many days until your men find you?" The Marquis of Wei gave a faint, ambiguous smile. "You recognize me?" I paused my work and sighed deeply. "You carry so many life-saving tools with you, you must have known this day would come. You entered this trap yourself, trying to make it look like an ordinary scene, yet dragged me into being bait alongside you. Had I not been quick-witted enough, I'd already be dead under the blade. I'm not holding it against you. For the sake of the broken Jiaowei Qin, I never questioned your schemes. Yet you came probing my depths. Where in this world is such logic to be found?" The mountain moon stretched Wei Yan's shadow long and slanted. He watched me silently. After a long moment, he raised his hand slightly, a gesture of conceding defeat. "Never imagined you were such a formidable girl," he said. By then, the hunted mountain hare was nearly roasted. I removed it from the fire, carved the meat, and offered Wei Yan several small scraps. The Marquis of Wei held the fragments of bone in silence, likely surprised by such meager treatment. But the spring chill was biting, and deep into the night, the fog grew thick. With only one rabbit, I naturally prioritized myself first. I saw nothing wrong with this. But Wei Ho clearly disagreed. He reached out to demand more. His brow furrowed in inexplicable indignation. "Shouldn't we split it evenly?" he demanded. I frowned in return. Why should we split it evenly? This was no idle remark. I had learned a lesson from Louis. Expecting others to treat you well when you don't even treat yourself well is childish and laughable. Wei Yan had men searching for him everywhere. But I had no one. The mountain slopes were fraught with danger. As a young woman, I needed to eat my fill and conserve my strength. Wei Yan remarked. "I had thought you were a kind-hearted woman." "Then you were mistaken," I replied. "I am not." I offered Wei Ho a faint smile. But in the end, I still gave him an extra portion of leg meat. That was the height of my generosity. Uncertain if pursuers were close, Wei Ho and I dared not risk turning back. I asked Wei Ho how many days he needed to die. He calculated and said, 2 days will suffice. With his crippled leg, I ventured out to gather wild berries and hunted another rabbit. The rest of the time, we simply stared at each other. In the dullest moments, we drew a chessboard on the ground with sticks and played. After winning 2 games, Wei Yan tossed his wooden piece aside, leaned lazily against the rock wall, and let a contented smile curve his lips. "Last night I dreamt you weren't in it. I spent the night alone beneath the cliff, starving and freezing though I escaped death. Yet when I awoke, the fire still burned beside me. Rabbit meat to fill my belly." This ramshackle cave felt more comfortable than any grand mansion. Truly, whether life feels complete is all a matter of comparison. His dream, I suppose, was a glimpse of a past life. But having just lost 2 games of chess, my mood was foul. I had no intention of responding to his philosophical musings. Instead, I pointed angrily at my mud-stained skirt. "This dilapidated cave? Do you think I chose to be here? Who do you think brought this misfortune upon me?" Wei Yan raised his hands in surrender. "I was wrong. My apologies." I snapped back to reality, meeting the amusement in his eyes and feeling momentarily dazed. The renowned Marquis of Wei, of all people, was now pleading with the same girl. What was this? As dusk fell, 3 exceptionally long bird calls echoed through the valley, and his men finally arrived. Late and unhurried. Still masked guards, though not the same ones as last time. With so many attendants, replacing one was hardly noteworthy. Yet unexpectedly, Louis was among them. Louis seemed equally startled to encounter me here. Frozen in place, her long lashes lowered, her eyes churning with emotion. I too halted my steps. So he'd connected with the Wei Marquis this early. Such a shift naturally didn't escape the Wei Marquis's notice. He tilted his head slightly. "You know each other?" Hiding it was pointless. This was something a simple inquiry could uncover. I answered plainly, "Yes. We were betrothed." Wei Yan's voice tightened slightly. He glanced at Louis as if by accident, then turned back to me. "Betrothed? And then?" "Then what?" "Then he found the person he claimed to have resented for years. The noble lady who had publicly humiliated him. He sought to humiliate her, only to ensnare himself in the scheme. They had been betrothed. Reuniting would have made a beautiful tale, which made my years of pouring my heart out to him look utterly ridiculous." Louis kept staring at me, his expression tense. I could have poured hot tea in his face, hurled insults at him, or now, in front of the Wei Marquis, declared my contempt for him, any of which would have humiliated him once more. But I only said, in a voice so soft it was almost a whisper, "There was no then. My story with him ended right here." Yet for some reason, upon hearing my words, Louis didn't relax. Instead, confusion clouded his brow as he frowned in deep thought. Recalling the events of my past life still left my heart bitter and aching. Wearily, I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, a branch of early spring apricot blossoms peeked out before me. I walked past Louis, stepping forward. Only when I reached it did I realize the branch lived low enough. Yet my hand couldn't quite reach it. Footsteps approached behind me, alternating between light and heavy. Wei Yan reached up, plucked the blossom, and pressed it into my palm. He then took the raven-black cloak handed to him by his attendant and draped it over my shoulders. Lowering his eyes, he said, "My schemes this time, my willingness to risk my own life, have dragged you into this. I nearly caused a great mistake. I owe you a debt. From now on, if there's anything you need or desire, bring this apricot branch to me. I will spare no effort to fulfill your wish. A promise from the Marquis of Wei is worth its weight in gold." I looked at the staff he leaned on, lifted my head, and smiled at him sincerely. "You really should find a good doctor to see. You're so handsome, don't go limping around." I had intended to search for the lotus stone, but unexpectedly, I injured my hand before even setting out. Not only could I not travel far, but even small tasks like tending the shop or tuning the chain became inconvenient. My master was kind enough to permit me to recuperate at home. I recalled hearing in my past life that Shiliang Temple had been raided by bandits. Most of the monks killed, and officials sent to investigate. Back then, I was busy embroidering wedding robes and paid little heed to such a horrific murder case. Little did I know it was connected to the Marquis of Wei. Then I recalled, Wei Yixing's mother died young, and his father's second wife always regarded him as a thorn in her side. Moreover, the emperor had placed spies around him. The world envied him for inheriting the Marquis title at such a young age, unaware that beneath his brocade robes, he walked on thin ice. He had no choice but to fake his own death to escape. Each step a struggle. Day after day, I basked in the sun within my small courtyard. When the wooden gate rattled, I opened it to find Louis standing there. He didn't step inside, remaining at the threshold. His clothes were thin, frayed at the cuffs. His lips cracked from dryness, still the image of a young man fallen on hard times. "I can't make sense of it," he said. "I heard from the matchmaker that you are a gentle and courteous girl. I've observed you for several days. You speak kindly to your master, to the customers in the shop, even to insolent ruffians. Why, then, do you heap insults upon me? Is it because I am poor and lowly, that proposing to you would dishonor you, bring shame upon you?" He had come to ask this. That day when the matchmaker came, she painted a dazzling picture. Yet not a single word was untrue. She said Louis had lofty ambitions, destined for a bright and glorious future. But what I value is simply a devoted partner to walk hand in hand with. I shook my head. No. Believe it or not, I never disdained your poverty. Then why refuse the marriage? I pondered for a moment and said, "You heard the matchmaker speak of my virtue, so you came to ask for my hand. But why should I be your virtuous wife? If I marry you, will you treat me well?" Louis froze, then frowned and said, "If you marry me, you will be my lawful wife. Naturally, I will treat you well." "How would you treat me?" I pressed. "If I were on the brink of death, would you live alone? If you were starving and finally found some venison, would you deny yourself and give it all to me? If you acquired a rare treasure, would you place it entirely in my hands?" "I could do those things," he said. "Is that so?" I paused briefly before murmuring softly, "But what if you encountered a heavenly match, someone you've longed for and cherished in your heart for years? What would you do then?" Louis declared with certainty, "There is no such person. I came to propose to you with sincere intentions. How could there be anyone else I've longed for and cherished for years? I sighed. You don't have one now. But you might in the future. Rather than exhausting myself to please you, I'd rather treat myself well. If rare venison comes my way, I'll eat it to satisfy my hunger. If precious jade appears, I'll carve it into ornaments I adore. How utterly satisfying. I held out my hands. In the sunlight, my fair palms were warm and dry, my nails round and full, without a single callus. I said, "Look at my hands. For a musician, these hands are my most precious treasure. I faced danger recently and have stayed indoors these past days precisely to restore them. If I can nurture myself to be as precious as jade, why should I waste my strength on you, washing your clothes, cooking your meals, sharing your hardships, and squander these hands for nothing?" Lu Yi watched me, lips pressed together, his eyes as dark as ink. After a long silence, he suddenly spoke, his voice brimming with resentment. "What about the Marquis of Wei?" "What? You reject my proposal with some absurd excuse. But what about the Marquis of Wei? Does he remain constant to you? Could he not meet someone he's longed for and remembered for years?" I frowned slightly, puzzled why he suddenly brought up the Wei Marquis. "Still," I answered him, "whether the Wei Marquis has someone he loves is none of my concern. Nor do I care how he treats me. Besides, the Wei Marquis may not be that kind of man. But you are undeniably that heartless, ungrateful, treacherous scoundrel. You are not worthy of my hand in marriage." Caught off guard by this insult, Lu Yi's eyes bulged with fury. He looked as if he wanted to devour me alive, his voice hoarse with pent-up rage. "Why? Why do you pass such judgment on me? Have you suddenly become a fortune-teller?" "I am no fortune-teller." The 8 words, heartless, ungrateful, treacherous, were forged through my own bitter experience. A fierce wind rose, whipping sand and dust into the air. I turned away resolutely, leaving only one sentence. "A man like you is unworthy of speaking to me. Let us never meet again in this lifetime." After my wounds healed, I followed my memory to the outskirts of Shenyang City and obtained the Lotus Stone. When I came, I was alone on horseback, disguised as a village woman visiting relatives. But when I tried to return, I encountered a problem. In my past life, I delivered urgent military dispatches through layers of scrutiny. Concealing a piece of lotus stone was no greater challenge. Yet what I sought was not a whole jade disc, but a pair of jade bracelets to mend my own heart. To obtain the bracelets, I first needed to find a craftsman. Yet I am merely a musician now. If I were to casually produce such a peerless treasure, it would be like a 3-year-old child flaunting gold bricks in a crowd. This lotus stone, I may have found it through cunning, but I cannot protect it. After much deliberation, no one seems more suitable than the Marquis of Wei. Power is the best talisman, and surely no one would dare seize what belonged to him. Dingyang and Shangyang both fell within Yunzhou, the domain of the Marquis of Wei. So I spurred my horse southward, heading for the Marquis's residence. Long unseen, the Marquis remained as opulent as ever, clad in a dark purple robe embroidered with golden lotus patterns. Spotting the flower branch in my hand, his expression grew solemn. Dismissing his attendants, he asked in a deep voice, "What brings you here?" I replied, "I desire a pair of jade bracelets." Wei Yan, who had been listening intently, heard only the request of a young girl and couldn't help but chuckle. He pushed the withered flower branch back to me, a smile curling his lips. "Merely a pair of jade bracelets? It scarcely warrants your use of this." He continued, "Whatever jewelry you desire, I shall accompany you to the treasure pavilion shortly." I shook my head, pulling the layered wrapped lotus stone from my bag, my expression even more solemn than his. "I only want this pair." I brought the raw stone, Wei Yan sighed at my stubbornness. Yet as the cloth layers peeled away, revealing the flawless, naturally formed glass stone, not a speck of impurity, even the well-traveled Marquis of Wei fell silent before exclaiming, "Where did you find this?" My expression remained impassive. "Picked it during a spring outing." After a moment's silence, Wei Yan said, "Find another one for me." Lifting my head, I saw a hint of teasing amusement in Wei Yan's eyes. He curved his lips and added, "What style do you prefer? I can have the craftsman sketch a few designs for you." I shook my head. "Just the simplest round bracelet will do." With the Marquis of Wei's men on the case, finding the finest local craftsman took no more than the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. Crafting a jade bracelet required time, neither more nor less than the period I'd need to return to Dingyang and come back to Yunzhou. It made my exhausting journey seem utterly unnecessary. When idle, I played the zither in the pavilion beside the water pavilion. Sometimes, during our hand-talk sessions, we discussed the grand schemes of the world, and I found myself able to exchange a few words with him. Wei Ho was astonished and asked how I knew such things. A mere country musician like me, never having ventured beyond Yunzhou, truly ought not to possess such insight. Yet, I have lived this life twice. Those shattered mountains and rivers, that landscape scarred beyond recognition, I did not witness them in vain. With deep sighing, I replied, "The imperial house is feeble. Wars rage everywhere. The people live in constant fear, displaced and homeless. Where are the bystanders? The realm has long yearned for a wise ruler." The Wei Marquis lowered his gaze, then abruptly rose, swept his sleeves, and drew his sword to cleave the chessboard in two. A commanding presence, as if surveying the entire realm, emanated from him. He gazed silently at the scattered pieces strewn across the floor, his voice deep and resolute. "I, Wei Yan, swear here and now, in my lifetime, I shall restore peace and tranquility to the realm." I nodded, watching him, a strange stirring in my heart. In my past life, while other feudal lords vied to proclaim themselves kings, only the Wei Marquis consistently championed the cause of aiding the emperor. His military discipline was strict. He never slaughtered entire cities, never executed surrendered soldiers, and his armies never plundered civilians wherever they passed. By the time I was reborn, his forces had already captured Chang'an, holding the emperor hostage to command the other lords. His lifelong aspiration was certain to be fulfilled. On the day the jade bracelet was finished, Wei Yan came personally to deliver it. I slipped on the long-awaited ornament, turning it over and over in the sunlight. In the blink of an eye, tears welled up in my eyes for reasons unknown. I said, "Do you think I'm too vain? A mere musician, how could I possibly deserve such a splendid peace bracelet? It's a waste of such a treasure." Wei Yan shook his head. "Not at all. You are the most precious." Sunlight filtered through the green leaves, scattering like fragments of gold. My eyes widened slightly as Wei Yan drew near, his fingertip brushing my cheek to gently wipe away that single tear. "A mere piece of jade," he said, "pales in comparison to your worth. It is blessed to have your affection." I stood frozen for a long moment before managing, "Thank you for your comfort." Wei Yan replied earnestly, "These are words from the heart, not mere comfort." But moments later, attendants arrived summoning Lord Wei. The latest military dispatches had arrived. I looked up just as several carrier pigeons flew into Wei Yan's study. He was truly too busy. During the days while the jade bracelet was being crafted, I had seen the light in his room burn through the night countless times. The flames of war had not yet reached Yunzhou, all thanks to his tireless efforts navigating the complex web of factions. He had his duty to his homeland and principles, while I had regrets I wished to mend. During those years of struggling to survive with Lu Yi, I witnessed young girls killed by horses' hooves before they could react, women giving birth by the roadside, and children separated from their families in the chaos of war. I wanted to live this life anew, not merely for a pair of jade bracelets. The next day, I presented the jade bracelets as tribute to the Wei Marquis, entrusting him to look after my master. In these turbulent times, she is frail and elderly, I cannot rest easy. Wei Yan fixed me with a heavy gaze. I thought you cherished these bracelets. I replied, I do cherish these jade bracelets. But wearing them once felt like a full circle. I cannot let them shackle me for the rest of my life. Wei Yan asked again, you entrust your master to me. With the world in such chaos, where do you intend to go? A young woman? I have unfinished business. I replied. I wish to see if I can salvage and make amends. I only seek to be true to my heart. Wei Yan remained silent for a long while. Yet in the end, he did not speak to stop me. He merely adjusted the hairpin at my temple. I had hoped to keep you by my side. But since you have your path to walk, I must let you go. May you find fulfillment and safety. I, too, shall strive for my ambitions in the Central Plains. When we meet again, may we both have achieved what our hearts desire. I encountered Wei Yan again in the depths of winter. During these days, I'd been rushing about, rescuing a girl from under galloping horses at the last moment, arriving with scissors and hot water just as a woman gave birth by the roadside, and telling a restless child, about to wander off searching for his long-absent mother, that she'd only be delayed a moment and would return soon. Upon reaching Songyang Slope, I found an infant girl by the riverbank, barely a month old. Her cries were feeble, and crows circled her side. In these chaotic times, abandoned infant girls were a common sight, for I myself had once been one. I sighed and bent down to pick up the infant. My own sustenance was nothing but coarse dry rations. Yet a child of this age still needed milk. Only in peaceful places could one find goat's milk. As the world grew increasingly chaotic, I followed my memory toward a place of stability. When I awoke, I was in Wei Ho's tent, lying on animal hides beneath a thick cloak. Wei Yan sat before my bed, sword in hand. Noticing my awakening, he turned, his jet-black eyes deep and cold, dark and unfathomable. His tone was stiff. It's safe here. Sleep a little longer. I propped myself up and asked, where's the baby? Wei Yan's fingertips trembled imperceptibly. He almost blankly pinched the corner of the blanket for me before replying. His lips pale. The child might have disturbed you upon waking. I had someone take her away to care for her. This child. Was it your choice? If not, I will have him cut into 1,000 pieces. Cut to pieces? Cut whom? Cut this infant girl who hasn't even reached full term yet? I replied inexplicably. I'm carrying her. So naturally it's all my choice. If I didn't want this, who could possibly force me? Wei Yan's body jerked violently. His Adam's apple rolled as he struggled to speak. After a long moment, he finally squeezed out a sentence. If it was your choice, then I can rest assured. His utterly distraught state left me utterly baffled. Considering how long we'd been apart, he might have encountered some troublesome matter. Just as I was about to offer some comfort, he strode out without a second glance, showing no inclination to catch up. For the rest of the day, I saw no sign of him. Unable to find the Marquis of Wei, I unexpectedly encountered someone else. It was Liu Yi, whose repeated meetings had always ended in awkwardness. Perhaps because he had never married. This lifetime's Liu Yi had come to serve the Marquis of Wei early on. I noticed a plain white band wrapped around his right arm, a sign of mourning. I recalled his family had once had an aunt. Perhaps left unattended, she'd succumbed to the plague. If so, this incarnation of Liu Yi, barely 20, was alone in the world, adrift and unattached. The sharp edge of youthful vigor no longer defined him. It seemed the wind and sand had ground away every sharp corner. reduce them to dust that settled in his stubborn eyes. He blurted out my name, as if he'd been searching for me for ages and finally found me again. It was as if my name had been carved into his heart year after year. His expression was almost dazed. "Cece," he said. "Cece, I'm cold." In my past life, he had called me thus. Yet in this lifetime, I doubt we were ever so familiar. I looked at him, my voice calm. "Master Lu, choose your words carefully." Louis shuddered. Then, as if awakening from a deep dream, the light in his eyes slowly gathered into focus. His voice grew hoarse as he corrected himself. "Jinx." It was the depths of winter, the coldest days of the year. He wore the standard-issue military uniform issued to all soldiers. Not that the uniform was poor quality, but those with families back home usually received extra warm clothing. The army-issued garments could never match the warmth and lightness of those made by one's own hands. He should have had a winter coat made of fur, with fine stitching and a collar stuffed with thick, dense fur. Unfortunately, he had no wife to make it for him. This feeling can only become a memory, for at the time, I was already lost in confusion. I thought he must have remembered something, but I had nothing to say to him. As we passed each other, Louis suddenly reached out and grabbed my arm. I frowned, about to shake him off, but he forced me against a pillar. His fingers tightened around my wrist, veins bulging, as if terrified I might escape. Yet his eyes were filled with unbearable pain, almost pleading as he said, "I only ask you one thing." He said, "I often dream of a first wife named Cece, who shared my hardships. I cannot see her face clearly, but her figure resembles yours so closely. Is it you?" I shook my head, replying with bitter sarcasm, "Have you lost your mind? I've hurled insults at you countless times. How could you still dream of such things? Could it be you're fond of me?" Hearing the contempt in my voice, Louis suddenly released my hand, his face turning ashen. He gritted his teeth. "You truly are not her. How could you ever compare to her? Is that so?" I smiled faintly, choosing not to argue. Our commotion drew the attention of patrolling soldiers. An armored squad leader stepped between us. His voice deep and stern. "Louis, what are you doing?" His tone was anything but polite. Judging by his uniform, Louis was now just an ordinary soldier. No one had disguised themselves as a beggar to deliver urgent military intelligence for him. In this lifetime, he hadn't yet had the chance to earn great merit. Louis frowned darkly. "Just a few words. What's wrong with that?" The leader shot him a warning glance, then clasped his fists in salute to me and led me forward. The entire army knew I was the Wei Marquis' honored guest, my status naturally superior to his. Following the young commander forward, I couldn't resist turning back to ask Louis, "Does the whip wound on your right hand still ache often?" A surge of satisfaction washed over me. At those words, the color drained instantly from Louis's face. He rushed forward recklessly, only to be blocked by the swords and spears of the entire patrol. I could barely make out his frantic, hoarse shouts, "Who are you? Who the hell are you?" Yet he would never receive an answer in this lifetime. I finally found Wei Yan in an empty tent. 2 empty wine jars rolled at his feet. I chuckled. "With tens of thousands of men under your command, you, their commander-in-chief, come here to drown your sorrows. How utterly irresponsible." Upon seeing me, Wei Ho silently adjusted his posture to appear more composed before reluctantly replying, "I'm still lucid. Not drunk. Has the child slept?" "At this hour, naturally," I replied. "And thanks to your rice gruel. No need to worry. I've already sent men out to find goat's milk. They should have it by tomorrow. As for you," Wei Ho paused, studying me with a sullen expression, "you should be resting properly. You shouldn't be running around like this anymore. Thank you for your concern, But let's not talk about me. I came to see you because I noticed, even at our first meeting today, that you seemed troubled. Is something weighing on your mind? Wei Yan lowered his eyelashes, burying his head like an ostrich, seemingly unwilling to meet my gaze. For some reason, despite having drunk 2 jars of wine, I felt an icy chill emanating from every pore of his body. After a long silence, he finally asked in a tight voice, "What? What kind of person is he? HM? Who?" "The child's father." I replied inexplicably, "I've never met him. If I could find the child's parents, why would I keep her with me?" Silence. Silence was the Wei Marquis tonight. After a long while, I cautiously probed. "You don't think?" Wei Yan snapped. "Shut up," I said. "You're blushing. It's from the wine." "Oh," Wei Yan added. "What are you laughing at?" I said. "I'm not laughing." Wei Yan fumed. "You're trembling with suppressed laughter." I finally couldn't hold back, clutching my stomach as I burst out laughing. "I've long heard of the Marquis of Wei's flawless strategies. Today I've witnessed one firsthand. We parted in spring, now it's deep winter. Even if I were pregnant, how could I possibly give birth in time? Some women deliver after only 7 or 8 months, it's not impossible. Besides, the infant in your arms is terribly small." "Ha! You know so much. Consider everything so thoroughly." "You." Wei Yan, flustered and angry, swept his sleeve aside and rose, about to cover my mouth. His fingertip inadvertently brushed my lips. I jolted violently, and Wei Yan froze instantly, his hands hidden in his sleeves, seemingly at a loss for where to place them. After a long moment, Wei Yan cleared his throat softly, slowly regaining his voice. He said, "Men and women should not touch each other. Indeed, it was somewhat improper. I believe I should take responsibility for you. HM? Rest assured, I will never speak of today's events to a third party. I will not tarnish your reputation." Wei Ho gritted his teeth. "Burn her, and my army could safely endure the winter without a single soldier freezing to death." "What do you mean?" "What I mean is, Jinx, are you made of wood?" The Marquis leaned closer, his gaze fixed on me, deep as the sea. "I desire you. I wish to marry you. How must I say it for you to understand?" No charcoal burned within the tent. Yet on this winter night, I felt my whole body burning. I parted my lips, taking a long moment before speaking. "I'm flattered by your regard, but I'm not sure I could love you with all my heart. Right now, I still love myself a little more. But a man like you deserves a virtuous wife, one who loves you wholeheartedly." Wei Yan chuckled softly. "I know you're a stingy girl. I knew at the moment you shared only scraps of the wild rabbit you hunted. Yet somehow, it still makes my heart flutter. They say one should marry a virtuous wife, someone warm and understanding who brings tea, washes clothes, and cooks meals. Naturally, that would be good. Yet, it would also be rather dull. Jin's is Jin's, not some appendage to Wei Yan. Love yourself well, and only then will you have the strength left to care for me. I believe that's not a problem." I stared at him blankly, feeling a high wall built within my heart suddenly collapse. It dissolved into ripples spreading out in concentric circles. Yet there was no breeze to stir them. Then Wei Yan reached into his robe and pulled out 2 jade bracelets, carried with him at all times. Yet he flung them aside casually. The lotus-patterned jade hit the ground, shattering into fine dust. "Observing your demeanor, I always sensed you'd endured much hardship, clinging to strength in an almost unreasonable way. I had my people investigate your past, yet found nothing unusual. After much thought, I realized your feelings toward these jade bracelets, both love and hate, were deeply ingrained. When you were absent, seeing them would often remind me of you. Since those old memories bring you no joy, there's no need to keep these jade bracelets, they only stir sorrow. We have all the time in the world to seek out another peerless piece of jade. But a girl like you, to seek marriage with a mere piece of jade would be an insult to your worth. I have lofty ambitions. I wish to offer the vast rivers and mountains as my dowry. Would you be willing to share this view with me? What truly matters isn't the jade bracelets, but cherishing oneself. I did indeed once meet someone unworthy, giving my all only to be left battered and bruised. But I think, to lose the ability to love because of one faithless person, that would be my loss. Perhaps there are still people in this world worth me trying to love. Wei Yan and I locked eyes for a long time, until the fire in his gaze began to fade. Then I suddenly smiled softly and said, "When I arrived, I saw the moonlight tonight is beautiful. Would you like to come out with me and see it? To see the moon, and make another wish. To hold your hand and grow old together." The end.